All right, Dave, welcome to the Inside Athletic Training Show. We appreciate you coming on as our first ever repeat guest on the show. Kind of an untraditional show today. We have some exciting things to talk about, specifically the 2023 PBATS Athletic Training Symposium for students that you hosted 2 weeks ago for more than 200 students across the country. For a little bit of background information, we had a number of extremely talented and experienced athletic trainers at the major and minor league level. Some of those include Jamie Reed from the Rangers, a new World Series champion, Scott Behringer, your colleague in Milwaukee, the head athletic trainer with the Brewers, Ron Porterfield, director of player health with the Dodgers, and PBATS president, and really a ton of other great people who provided some awesome information for the students attending. To start today, I'll kick it over to you to let you share some background information just about the symposium, your goal when you set out to make this a real thing, why it was important to you, and any other items you want to share with background for the listeners.
Well, first, let me say thanks for having me again, Sam. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be the first repeat, so I appreciate you having me and talking about this event. So the PBATS internship committee, the PBATS internship program, I view it as the face of our society to the academic community and the students they serve. So our aim in general is to provide educational experiences to students, and the primary way we do this is through offering internships and working with the member organizations to try and set those up. As you might imagine, it's highly competitive. So, for example, in 2023, we had thousands of views to our website internship page on the PBATS website. We had probably almost 300 applications for internships, but we were only able to place roughly about 50 of those for positions. And so our goal for doing this symposium this year was to be able to begin to kind of bridge the gap and provide opportunities for those that didn't get an internship position, and kind of provide some interaction, some education, and programming for those that didn't get the daily immersive experience. So we tried to provide some of that experience to the masses, so to speak. And we tailored the topics to those that students told us they wanted to learn about. So we surveyed all of our applicants from last year and asked them, hey, if we were going to have a student symposium, what topics would you like to hear about? And so our planning committee for this event sat down and kind of went through those and said, all right, like these would be good for a inaugural student symposium event.
Yeah, definitely a great opportunity for those students who weren't able to, get an internship and work with a team. Provided some awesome information, which we'll get into here. So I want to walk through the key presentations from the symposium and let you explain the importance of each, what matters in the athletic training profession, and just why this information is so important for students. So to start, Jamie Reed with the Texas Rangers presented to the group on youth arm health and also how that happens to impact you guys as athletic trainers in Major League Baseball, specifically with the draft process and reviewing so many medicals for younger athletes who may have some issues dating back to youth baseball. So go ahead and share a little insight into Jamie's presentation.
Well, this was, so we got a lot of feedback from attendees and even some of our presenters, and this was probably one of the more well-received presentations. Our goal was to have a blend of clinical information as well as practical networking information and things like that. And Jamie's presentation talked about basically the Tommy John epidemic and how it is a youth issue that we at the professional level are left to deal with in a lot of cases. And what was really interesting to me was one of the feedback pieces that we got from a student that attended the symposium. And he said that his upper extremity class that he took at school never really clicked with him until this presentation, and now the kind of the evaluation and how this stuff all works together, from a previous history to evaluation to rehab, finally kind of made sense to him after Jamie's talk. And I thought that was a really neat point of feedback that we're able to kind of, as a clinical instructor myself, and one who's really interested in the educational process, it made me feel good that we were able to connect the knowledge that people were learning in school to real world scenarios that help them kind of connect the dots and make things make sense.
Yeah, that's a great point. And providing the context for the students has always been, something you've mentioned is hugely important. We see so many students with a wealth of knowledge in the textbooks, but ultimately getting that experience on the field or learning from people like you and Jamie in regard to these topics is hugely important. Another really important presentation was given by your colleague, Scott Behringer, who's the head athletic trainer with the Brewers. Scott really went very in depth into the hiring process, what he looks for, attitudes, experience, professionalism from an athletic trainer looking to break into the game during the interview process. Scott well, you've worked with him for years now. Talk a little bit about his presentation, how that relates to what you guys do when hiring with the Brewers.
Yeah, this was again another one that it was specifically asked for by students. What do MLB organizations look for when we're hiring and selecting interns and hiring new employees? And Scott did a great job of touching on how to build a resume and preparing for the interview process. Some of the really big key takeaways for me were, obviously he touched base on he did a really good job of separating like an actual full-time employee versus a student intern role and what those responsibilities would be and your day-to-day and so forth. But one of the big takeaways for me was touching on the interview process and how that goes, who you'll be interviewing with. He even provided some really interesting sample interview questions to really give students an idea of, hey, like, this is a critical thinking profession, and we're going to ask you how to critically think, how you critically think, how you problem solve, and so that's one of the criteria that we're evaluating potential employees on. The other thing that he talked about that I think is spot on is that not only is the organization interviewing you, but you should also be interviewing the organization. I saw it was like a little cartoon kind of meme not too long ago that talked about, it was an HR rep kind of interviewing somebody and said, why do you want to work here? And then the prospect turned around and said, well, why should I work here? Right? Like, just as much are we interviewing prospective employees, the prospect should also be interviewing the organization to make sure it's a good fit for what your philosophy is, for your personality, for what your goals are. Because if it's not a good fit, you're going to be miserable. And I think we've all been in scenarios like that before, and they're not fun, right? They're not fun places to go to work every day, and so I thought Scott did a really good job of touching on that and the interview process and how to go through that, both in reviewing for the interview and preparing to interview them yourself.
Yeah, he definitely provided the students who attended with some behind the scenes info that they're likely not going to get in many other instances. So a great job there by Scott, like you mentioned. One of the coolest things that about the symposium I thought was the breakout room. So we had a couple different topics that were preferred by the attendees. So some of those, Teresa Lau and Amanda Lee hosted a women in athletic training session. Chris McDonald and Brad Grollo hosted a session about the pathway into professional baseball, which is, as we've talked about, clearly a very, very in-demand topic for students. What did you take away as key points when you were able to jump into each of those sessions?
Well, yeah, so Teresa and Amanda and Kelly Boyce, now with Detroit, they led a panel discussion on women and professional baseball, and maybe I'm a bit naive. Obviously, I'm not a female in the profession, but I thought that this was a key topic for us in this symposium. This is a topic and discussion that kind of needed to happen, and at least in our first event like this, because early on in my career, I think baseball was thought of as a good old boy network, and that's not the case anymore. And when you look at the number of athletic training students, it is a high female percentage. And I thought that it was important for us when putting this program together to make sure that women were aware that there are opportunities in professional baseball for them. And so Teresa and Kelly and Amanda did a fantastic job of just kind of talking through those points, what some of the obstacles and roadblocks they may have experienced, and then and having the opportunity to answer questions. So I thought that was kind of a must-have topic for us in this inaugural event. And then Chris and Brad basically led the other gender version of this of that topic, just talking about pathways into baseball and how they got there and what their roles are and so forth. And my biggest takeaway here was that it's important for prospective clinicians to understand the demands of the job, right? Like
Sure.
it was again, if you, much like interviewing an organization to know if it's a good fit, you also have to understand, like, if this is something that you want to do, because it's not a 9-to-5 job. At the professional level, the high performance sporting environment, your phone is on all the time, whether it's the front office or whether it's coordinators or players calling you at odd hours of the night, with some issue. And so Brad and Chris did a fantastic job of laying out, what their roles and duties are, and again, like how they, and this was a theme throughout the whole event, was how to get into professional baseball.
Yeah, and to that point, looking back at the symposium, so many students clearly want to know, like you said, how do I get into this? How do I land that first internship? How do I, work in the minor leagues or find a way in when it's such an in-demand profession? One of those really interesting presentations actually came from Nevin Dominguez with the Royals. He spoke about his time in the Dominican Republic, breaking into the Royals system that way. Share a bit with the listeners about Nevin's talk and also your viewpoint on getting experience early in the DR.
More and more, the entry-level point into professional baseball is through the Dominican academies of the various organizations in the league. So, it's historically been a tough role to fill, I think, for clubs, but that is changing. And I think, sometimes the barrier to filling those Dominican positions for clubs is the fact that, prospective employees don't understand what that's about and what's in it for them. And, the pluses and minuses, right? And so they shy away from it. And Nevin was fantastic in laying out, like, hey, this is really cool experience. And let's be honest, it's a cultural experience as much as it is a clinical experience. And he did a fantastic job of talking about those cultural issues and how to deal with, how to navigate, the Latin culture versus what we may be more traditionally used to.
Yeah, and all of the speakers were great, and you went into great detail there about the presentations. The symposium overall was extremely informative. Everyone at PBATS did, an awesome job in relaying this quality information to students. From your perspective as someone who's been in the big leagues for seemingly a really long time and just so much experience, what stood out to you most from the symposium? And also, what do you hope that students took from the time spent with all these great athletic trainers?
Well, our goal was to provide a lot of touch points and opportunities for interaction between PBATS members and students. And I think we did that. Again, we had panel discussions on specific topics of interest. We had small group breakouts at the end where we were able to put 5 to 15 students in a chat room with a certified athletic trainer working in baseball and let them talk about and ask questions, specific to what they wanted to learn about. And so you get that more small group interaction. And in planning for next year, this will continue to be a point of emphasis for us. As we look at how we emphasize those touch points and interactions, this helps to begin, this helps the students to begin to build their network, right? Their social network and their communication points with PBATS. And so I know we had several individuals that shared emails and contact information, which is great because the learning and the mentoring can continue long after the event ended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously those networking opportunities are huge for anyone looking to break into the game. Outside of attending, symposiums like this or networking or trying to find a way in, what do you think from your experience that students and young professionals who attended the symposium might want to be doing during the busy hiring time right now to kind of break into the game?
Well, thanks for bringing that up, Sam, because as the chair of the PBATS committee, internship committee, it's important that I think that everyone knows that our 2024 internship application process is open. It opened in mid-October, and it'll continue until the end of the year. So the New Year's Eve basically is when we'll stop, taking applications. Mm-hmm. So students enrolled in an accredited athletic training education program are eligible to apply. So I would encourage all students, whether you're first year or second year, to apply. And the way this works is, PBATS serves as kind of a clearinghouse for collecting and distributing the application portfolios to the MLB organizations. And so then it's up to the individual teams to interview and select students by matching the students' needs to their own organizational needs. And then there's a variety of, opportunities and activities in each organization and affiliate that the student may be placed at may do it a little differently. But the primary role, for an intern is to learn, right? So learning is their top job description. So, there's a lot of individuality in how the different clubs set this up, and some teams have established curricula that are designed and tailored, to the overall areas of development and the duration of their internship experience, while others rely more on the school's plan of study. So, but these opportunities, this is the time of year when organizations are starting to plan those out. So I think it's important to make sure that everyone is aware that these opportunities are available, and that our application process is open. And for more information about the process and eligibility and what the program may entail, I would encourage everyone to visit our internship page at www.pbats.com.
Yeah, definitely a lot of opportunity there for students. One thing I'm super interested to hear, obviously, yourself included, you had to get your start somewhere. You've been with the Brewers for a long time. You're a member of the PBATS executive board, very established in the game. Talk to the listeners about your first time getting into the game, how that happened, what your first role was in athletic training and pro baseball, and just kind of how all that materialized for you.
Well, so out of graduate school, I started out as a kind of a clinic coordinator, an athletic training coordinator, and an outreach coordinator at a large clinic in South Georgia, and it was a hotbed for baseball players, that area. So Columbus, Georgia is where I was, and Columbus High School was a perennial state champion team. Columbus State University was a powerhouse in D2 baseball. There were a lot of minor league pro guys that lived in the area. Across the river in Alabama was the Phoenix City, Alabama Little League team that at that time, this was in the mid 90s, they had just won the Little League World Series. And so baseball was a target rich area for baseball players in that environment. And what my role in the clinic, I saw patients, and I also, did outreach, but I also did a lot of performance enhancement type stuff. And it just kind of molded into working with a lot of baseball players. And the Cleveland Guardians, used to be the Indians. They had a minor league team in Columbus, Georgia at the time, and when they would go on the road, they would leave a lot of their injured guys back that couldn't play. And so
Sure.
Myself and one of our PTs in the clinic would work with those players, so that we would do what I would call the clinical rehab for those players, because they weren't doing baseball activities yet and so forth. And so I did that for it was several years, and finally after, let's see, I guess it was in 2000, Rick Jameson, who was a minor league athletic trainer with the Indians, then went on to be the head trainer with the Red Sox later on. He called and said, "Hey, we like what you do. Why don't you come spend a couple weeks with us and spring training and see what we do?" And so I was like, "This sounds like a lot of fun." So I went down to, they were in Winter Haven, Florida at the time, and I spent a couple weeks and got the opportunity to kind of blend into their staff and go through the day to day and be a part of what they do, almost like an internship, except for I was a certified athletic trainer, and just really immersing myself in the baseball experience. And so when I left my 2 weeks there, I told my wife, I said, that was too much fun. I've got to do that full time. And so the next hiring cycle and the next fall, I started applying for baseball jobs, and I went to work for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So my first role at the Diamondbacks, I was originally hired to do short season in Missoula, Montana, and they had some staffing changes. And before I even started working, I got promoted. I was working in low A in South Bend, Indiana. And so I did my first role was full season low A team, South Bend, Indiana, working, by myself as the sole athletic trainer, and working with a strength and conditioning coach, and wearing all the hats that you wear as a minor league athletic trainer, with, clubhouse duties and travel duties, and, all the feels, as they say. Right. And yep. I just loved it.
Yeah. No, that just goes to show, how much it really takes to break into the game, how much sacrifice there is. And one thing that I found, compelling that you mentioned while hosting the symposium was, this is different. This is not a 9-to-5 job. And work-life balance it may not exist sometimes. And you mentioned while you were, introducing the symposium that, work and life are combined. There might not be a huge difference between the two, and it definitely shows within the profession. What are your thoughts on that as people kind of jump into the game for the first time? They may be overwhelmed. They may have not realized, like you mentioned earlier, what the position entails and the demand. What do you think about that concept in terms of the work-life balance as an athletic trainer?
Well, you put me on the spot with that one. That's a loaded question, because as I talked about in the symposium, I'm probably of the generation where, for me, maybe it was the work, maybe it was the ethic that was in. My father was a career naval officer, so for me, I always grew up learning that work is life. Sure. I guess. And, but I will say this: like you have to have you have to have a passion for what you do, right? And I think that's why number one, I think that's why it's important for talks like this, for events like the symposium, for immersive experiences and internships. It's important because it provides opportunities for people to understand what the job is, right? Because if like you said, like if you don't understand the demands, then it becomes challenging, right? And sure. And I think not only and I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but I think not only is it important for students and prospective employees to understand what they like about the job, but these experiences also provide opportunities for students and prospective employees to say, hey, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. And that's okay, because that's a learning experience as well, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. And so that's number one, I think that's important. But when you have a passion for what you do and a passion for the game and the baseball culture, for example, like when you enjoy what you do, it's never work, right? And so then you don't have to worry about work-life balance. Yeah. But I will. I think this is something that I brought up in the symposium, and kind of just a little side discussion was I will say that the closer and closer you get to the big league level, the less life you may have, right? Like,
Sure.
I have two telephones, right? One's personal, one's work. My work one is always on. Now I get far less calls than Scott, our head trainer, does, but because he is constantly on the phone talking to the front office. There's constantly some piece of information that needs to get shared, and on other episodes of the podcast, when you've talked to head trainers and specifically coordinators, like, you get that sense, like, there is always information. There's always information that needs to be relayed to the front office. And so, especially during the season, there's work, and you sprinkle life in there a little bit. And then during the off season, which we now call the season without games, you get to have more life. Now you do have to find ways to keep your sanity during the season. Like we've heard other guests talk about, what they like to do on the road and so forth. I like to find a coffee shop and read, but usually I'm reading, something of interest from a journal article or, a book that's, from a professional development standpoint or what have you. So I'm probably maybe the worst example of work-life balance. It's more like the seesaw, leaning heavily towards to the work side. But again, it's important to understand, what you're getting into.
Yeah, of course. No, that's helpful. And I know, I didn't want to put you on the spot saying, you sit at your office all day and have no life, but I thought it was really interesting. Your passion for athletic training is second to none. And that's why it doesn't feel like, for you, it's, you're not punching clock. You're not just trying to go home from work. You're actually invested and passionate about it. So that really shows how important it is for students, maybe with that first internship, to really understand if this is for them. And I think you did a great job of showcasing that at the symposium and here today as well. Well, Dave, we really appreciate all that information. I want to end the show today by giving you an opportunity to really just share one piece of advice for those students out there who want to end up in your footstep or follow in your footsteps. They want to end up as the assistant athletic trainer for the Milwaukee Brewers or something like that. What's one great piece of advice as they kind of approach the professional world that you could provide?
Well, so I'm gonna, back up a little bit, but I think one of the main things that we look for when we're hiring and selecting candidates is baseball experience, right? And or a demonstrated desire to work in baseball. And so, one of the reasons we are looking for that is because those particular people that have some experience working with baseball players begin to develop a feel for the game, right? You develop an understanding of the demands for the sport, the culture of baseball players, the biomechanics, common injury patterns, you name it. And so this, your emphasis then should just be on, doing good work, and just embrace where you are at the time. And it's good to have goals and dreams for the future, but I think the emphasis should be to do good work where we are, and then the powers that be will notice that, right? And so this, when you have a feel, when you just work on doing good where you're at. One of my mentors, Dan Wright, years ago, he called this being aggressively patient. And so setting yourself up for being in the right place at the right time. And then continuing to do that good work. And so that's usually my go-to piece of advice. But for students, trying to, because again, we are looking for a genuine desire to work in the game, and so when you're building your resume, you should be building it to demonstrate that desire and that baseball experience.
Yeah. No, all very good information. I think everything you've mentioned today, and also that got mentioned at the symposium, will really set up students who joined us a couple weeks ago to be in a great spot to kind of know how to navigate the process. And I think that's something that Jamie and Scott, Teresa, Kelly, everybody that joined to showcase that information really did a great job of sharing with the students. So, well, Dave, we really appreciate your time coming on the show for a second time. And appreciate your time and effort to help educate the next generation of Major League Baseball athletic trainers and potential PBATS members. And one more time, I just want to reiterate that we do have the internship program available for application. Students can head on over to pbats.com/internship to learn more info, or always get in touch with Dave through our website that way. So thanks again, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy it.
All right, Dave, we're good to go, man. That was great. Super informative. Definitely look forward to getting these internship numbers this year, and I think we'll be in a good spot. So, stay in touch, and obviously we'll get together next week and get some more stuff done.
Yeah, sounds good, Sam. Thanks for letting me kind of recap the event, because I'm already looking forward to doing it again next year.
Yeah, that was great. We'll figure out how to make sure we get all of our attendees to actually show up. And I mean, we still had a good number, but hopefully we can get make it even bigger next year. I think it'll be great.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is, we capped our number at 250. I mean, obviously, if we let more people register, then more people will show up, right? And so, we can look at that for sure.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right, Dave. We'll see you next week. Safe travels down to Nashville, or up for you.
Yeah. I get to drive, so it'd be nice. It's 80 miles from my house, so it's not bad,
beautiful.
Though.
Love it. Yeah. All right, man. Well, we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
All right, take care.
Talk to you later.